In chapter 8 of Exodus, we continue now as the plagues on Egypt intensify. And so Moses and Aaron come to Pharaoh with the same demand, let my people go, verse 1, that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite your whole territory with frogs. Now, you like frogs, he says? Well, I'm going to give you frogs. One of their deities was a frog god. So these things, again, always challenging the deities of Egypt. And so I'm going to bring frogs everywhere. Your frogs are going to be in the river. They're going to be in your house. They're going to be in your bedroom. They're going to be in your bed. It's going to be in your food, he says in verse 3, and they'll be everywhere. And so they go out and they actually produce these frogs that are just everywhere. But once again, interesting enough, verse 7, the magicians did the same thing with their secret arts, showing once again they have some miraculous powers. We can't dismiss miraculous powers of evil spirits, of Satan himself. So there are some abilities here, but they're always inferior to the powers that God has. And that is evident here when later on they were able to duplicate frogs, but in verse 8 they couldn't remove them. It says, Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he may remove the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go that they may sacrifice to the Lord. So apparently the magicians could not get rid of the frogs. They could produce some, but they could not get rid of them. And so he has to go to Moses and ask for Moses and Aaron to get rid of these things. They're probably driving the people nuts. Verse 10, then he said, tomorrow, he said, may it be according to your word, that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. So he says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to remove the frogs just so that you know there's no one like the Lord our God. That's the whole purpose behind this. You need to see the uniqueness and the almighty power of the one true God. And so he does that, although they do have to get rid of the frogs. And verse 14, they piled them up in heaps, and the land began to become foul, stinky of all the death here. But verse 15, when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not listen to them as the Lord had said. So once again, he hardens his heart. As soon as relief comes, as soon as the trial is over, he's right back to his old ways. And so we have a second plague in this chapter, and that this time is gnats. And verse 16, and that they may have become gnats throughout all the land of Egypt. And so there's going to be gnats everywhere. And you know how pesty gnats are. Verse 18, the magicians tried their secret arts to bring forth gnats, but they could not. Now they're at the end of their abilities. They cannot produce the gnats. And so now the physicians are realizing there's an issue here. Matter of fact, in verse 19, the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened. So even the magicians are starting to realize there's something here beyond their arts, beyond their beliefs and their deities. This is actually the finger of God. I think they're starting to get spooked. They're starting to become afraid. But Pharaoh is hardened. He probably had some kind of protection from many of the gnats. It didn't bother him as much as other people. And so he really wasn't buying into this at this point. So we go down to verse 20, and there's going to be a third plague in this chapter. But same message, verse 20. The Lord says, let my people go that they may serve me. Verse 21, if you do not let the people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies on your servants and your people. But he says in verse 22, but in the land of Goshen, where the Jewish people lived, there will be no flies. So now he's distinguishing where the Jews live, God's people there, from the Egyptians. They will not suffer, but the Egyptians will. And it's all for the purpose of verse 22, that you may know that I am the Lord. Once again, same theme, same idea. You need to know that I am the Lord, and I can do all things. And so they bring flies into the land. And you can imagine how pesty that is. My wife's been chasing a fly around our house for 2 days. Could never catch the little rascal. He's very elusive, very smart apparently. And she could not catch him. And then finally she did, and she was elated. She killed the fly. One fly. Could you imagine hundreds of thousands of flies everywhere? And how difficult that would be. So finally, verse 25, Pharaoh called to Moses and Aaron and said, go sacrifice to your God within the land. Now he's offering a compromise. within the land. You can offer sacrifices to God, but you have to stay in Egypt. But Moses would have nothing to do with it. Verse 27, we must go 3 days' journey into the wilderness. Okay, Pharaoh said, okay, but you can only go so far. You can't go very far out there. Verse 28. But as soon as Moses got rid of the flies, Pharaoh once again, verse 32, hardens his heart this time also, and he did not let the people go. This is getting really old, isn't it? Very redundant, as one plague after the other, demonstrating who God is ignored by Pharaoh. We have some more plagues in chapter 9, so I hope you can join us tomorrow.